welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you, and hope that we will learn a lot from you today on this discussion. On his right is the Honorable Council Lubega Medad Segona. He is MP for Busiro County East in Wakiso District. He is the current chairman of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. Certainly not yet a professor. We shall find out whether he intends to become one. Honorable Segona, you're most welcome to the show.
Well, you're trying to dig out for the most highly guarded state secret. But good evening to you, Charles, and to our viewers out there.
Next on Segona's right is, immediate right is Professor Maurice Ogenga Latigo. He is a former leader of opposition in Parliament, former member of Parliament for Agago, and the last I checked, Agago has been split into so many parts. I don't even want now to make a mistake, to risk and say Agago West or Agago West East. But Professor, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening, viewers, and it's a pleasure to join my old colleagues on the program today. I was last member of Parliament for Agago North.
Oh,
before they added one more constituency there again.
Okay. Finally, on my immediate left, we have Council Sarah Birete. She is the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Thanks a lot. Let me start from some of the youngest members on the panel, and in no particular order for the two of them. I want to start by picking your minds, and then we shall bring in the seniors later. Probably they were there at the time, whether you know, at whatever age they were probably there when Uganda attained independence. But Sarah, what does 59 years of independence of this country mean to you then and now?
Well, when you take a look at the timeline for Uganda, you know, the journey to independence to date, it is not a very interesting timeline to look at, because you have the immediate pre-independence election, which had a bit of violence, 1961, won by Benchuan Kahumu. We celebrated a few, I think last week?
Yes.
Yes. And as the chief minister then, who became the first prime minister, and I don't know why we have a distortion at that level, that many people in schools say Dr. Bote was the first prime minister, yet it is Benchuan.
Of independence Uganda?
Pre-independence Uganda, but the first prime minister of Uganda, Ugandan prime minister, was Benchuan.
I think they usually say of independent Uganda.
They rarely add.
Uganda started.
They rarely add.
Yes, so from 1961 you have the 1962 election again of UPC Kavakayeka, and you know that alliance of convenience that later resulted in two problems. And we saw the 1962 negotiated constitution by the political elite then, and the only contentious issues were balancing the interests of the political elite. It was that the 1962 constitution was never focused on the wishes and aspirations of the people. It was just a negotiation of the politicians with the colonial masters. So that created a distortion for our troubled constitutional journey, as we shall see a later brief as I will mention. And from there, we saw the contestation of Obote and the Uganda Kingdom the first constitution amendment after the first anniversary of independence was to make Sir Edward Mutesa the ceremonial prime minister, the ceremonial president, ceremonial president of Uganda. Then the disagreements that happened, and later the referendum on the lost counties, where then the president found trouble, signing the acts that would see him lose territory, and the fight that led into the Uganda crisis in 1964. Then we go into the Pigeonhole Constitution in 1967, where Dr. Bote surrounded Parliament with the military and told them, peace, you are going to debate just today and pass a constitution, and you will find copies in your pigeonholes. And that's how we came to have a pigeonhole constitution as a country. There then we go into the Idi Amin, of course the Uganda crisis, the Idi Amin overthrow of power, and Idi Amin having led the attack on the Paris for the Kabaka, and then our Kabaka dying into exile. That created, ushered in a troubled political history for this country. Idi Amin era, of course, was troublesome. Historians have estimated the death through extrajudicial killings to about 300,000 in 8 years. Then we follow with the National Liberation Forces through the Mosh Constitution, Mosh Conference, Rure, who led the country for 68 years. Then you have 68 days, sorry. Then you have Benaisa.
6 months. You
have Paulo Muanga with the military commission, which also entrenched militarism, as we are seeing today in our politics. And the 1980 elections and the contestations that happened. And then how NRA, I don't know whether Professor Mshemeza was part of it, NRA then went to the bush, claiming to be aggrieved on behalf of DP, whose election was rigged. And in 1986, we have the NRA leadership to date. But what is interesting, just as I summarize, the issues that were contentious at independence are still the issues that are contentious today. We still have the Uganda political question unresolved. We still have unresolved political succession in this country. We still have the crisis of land rights, and at the height of land grabbing by NRM regime today, unresolved. In 1989, the NRM government started the journey of making a new constitution, having suspended the 1967 constitution through legal notice number 1. And the issues that were unresolved then in the constitution, like the question of multi-party politics, which was later resolved in a referendum in 2006, 2005, 2006. We have the unresolved question of federal, and even now the rejuvenated Maryland debate. We had the unresolved land question in the constitution, and we still have a debate where government still wants to reenact the Idi Amin decree on compulsory acquisition of land. And we have the unresolved questions on human rights, on how to choose our leaders. The basic question that should have been answered under self-governance should have been the question of a democratic, free and fair election, still unresolved to date, as we celebrate 59 years. And these issues are even raised in the Munster report that was, commissioned in 1961, before independence, and the discussions that led to the first constitution, still the same contentious issues. And the conclusion of that Munster report is that Uganda's political actors do not know how to compromise. And for democratic governance to thrive, political actors must know that there are times when you have to compromise and listen to another voice, however big or small, and accommodate dissenting views.
Okay.
These are still the challenges of the day.
Okay, let me go to Honorable Segona. What does 59 years of independence mean to you as a Ugandan?
Charles, I thought you said you would start with the young people in the panel.
They are being exhausted.
And I thought the next two would be Professor Ganga Latigo. But
you be the acting.
You having
no problem with being young.
having placed me in the middle between two professors, which I thought is I don't know whether it's deliberate. You know, in boxing, when you get the heavyweight and then the lightweight, and you place the lightweight in the middle of two heavyweights, some people would say that's voluntary assumption of risk. That said, yes, I think I want to thank my sister Sarah for having taken us through the history and the distortions there. I think if anything is to be written about the history of Uganda, it's the word distortion is at the center, because it's a history written according to who is writing and who is ruling. When you talk about 59 years of independence, the first question is independent from what and from who? Are Ugandans independent themselves? First, independence would connote self-rule and self-sustenance. Today, somebody sent on one of the fora where I am a member, sent a picture of President Idi Amin somewhere in UAE with General Moses Ali seated in the back, and said at that particular, that is I think the Islamic conference, General Idi Amin Dada made a donation to the struggling UAE and said 50 years now, down the road, President Museveni has gone back to the same UAE where Amin was making donations, literally to beg. And that now, this is mine, of the 59, 35 or about 36 of those years have been spent by the country under one man's leadership. And that man is Tibuhaburwa Yoweri Kaguta Museveni Yeseri, General. Now, if anyone is to take a share, one, of the positive or the remarkable achievements, as you would want to place them, the credit goes to General Yoweri. But if you are to talk about the misrule, the turbulence that the country has walked through, equally, General Museveni takes the biggest share of the contribution to that turbulence. It has been a 59-year period of constitutional and political instability. If you're to talk about instability from the year 1971 to date, you cannot erase the name Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, now Tibuhaburwa. He can tell you maybe in 71 the person who attacked was Yoweri Museveni. For me, I'm a different man. You are talking about the constitutional instability arising out of the fusion of the military function and the civil function of the state. Even when Ugandans, you see, Uganda has always had a constitution for as long as it has been in existence. What has been lacking is constitutionalism. The spirit of adherence to the basic principles of good governance and rule of law is what has been missing. We've had laws, we've had constitutions, including the one of 1966, which was written by one man, I'm told, and he was proudly telling us so, the late President Binaisa, who was Attorney General, writing a constitution overnight. I think they spent the night on a typewriter writing a constitution for the country, and it was called a constitution. Whether it met the basic standards of what a constitution should be and how it should be generated is a different matter. The political scientists will tell you. We've had laws, including the Public Order and Safety Act, under which the government bestowed unto itself the power to detain without trial. And one of the architects and proponents of the same, the Honorable Grace Stewart Ibinjira, was one of the first and immediate victims of the same. Well, he said, in his lamentation as quoted by Professor Karugire, he said, fate is a double crosser. I defended this law with vigor, and here I am as its first victim. The person who wrote the law, the Police Act that requires application for permission before you hold a public meeting, was Honorable Godfrey Lukongwa Binaisa. And when he was toppled and attempted to demonstrate, he was arrested at City Square and said, no, when I was writing this law, this is not what I meant. The police said, this is what we read. The Public Order Management Act was mainly propelled by my son, the Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi. When he fell out with the regime, one day in a meeting he said, I will be going to Mbale, and I said, you will not go to Mbale. He said, why? I said, because this country had somebody called Edward Kalikaihura, and you will not go. He said, well, will I have offended any law? I said, gentlemen, you think we've been brutalized because we have been offending the laws of this country? Did he reach Mbale? The militarization of civil functions. I think this has been there for as long as we've had dictatorships in this country. In 1980, there was an attempted demonstration. And now, Charles, I'm talking about those of us who have been around, at the City Square. Ordinarily, a demonstration would have been quelled down by the police. And what happened? The army, commanded by the then Minister for Defense, went to the City Square, did not only quell the demonstration, peaceful, unarmed, but killed Ugandans. And it took the minister himself to go with bazookas to quell a demonstration. And that has manifested itself more during the days of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, when he started appointing military generals into the police. Now you can see it has become a culture that the police is literally headed by a soldier. Starting with the days of my brother General Katumba Wamala, you have Kale Kaihura, then he brings in my brother General Sabit Mzei, he brings in the late Paul Lokech, may his soul rest in peace. And now, just wait, I can bet from here, the next deputy IGP is going to be another soldier. When you go even to the lower departments in the police, you'll find soldiers. Tell me one civil function of the police in terms of public order management where you will purely have the police without soldiers. None. But even where the soldiers, they send what you may see as the police, you find soldiers dressed in police uniform. Now, when I saw, you would see General Kale Kaihura putting on the police uniform, you ask, does this man have a first number in the police? He does not have it. but because they have said he's IGP. So the turbulence generally need not be announced on radio that we have turbulence. We have continued to witness that. In 1966, still the crisis could have been managed legally. You know, some people think like that lawyers are like carpenters. Wherever we see anything, we think it's a nail, therefore you need a hammer. But you see, once a country chooses to go the constitutional route, you cannot resolve a dispute without resorting to the law. One way or the other, the law would sort you out. If in 1966 somebody took up a constitutional challenge in a court of law, we would have come out as victors as a country, because a court which is mandated under the country's constitution to resolve issues of the constitutional nature would make a pronouncement, and that pronouncement would be binding on all. So the only reason we are suffering, one, politically, is because we do not want to resort to the law where we think it does not favor us. Charles, can you imagine that we have a constitution that has been amended twice for the sake of one individual? When they were making the constitution, those who were there, in 1993, I've gone through the Hansard. In the CA, the debate about age limit, for example, the ruling group in government wanted age limit. And we have been meant to understand that at the time, their focus was on Milton Obote. So they wanted to lock him out. The people in opposition then, the Professor Latigos, were focused on saying, no, let it be open so that anyone can contest. When the debate came back, Yoweri Museveni was hitting the ceiling in terms of his age, which he thought would never reach. I think he had tampered with the meter. So he thought that when you tamper with the meter, you will tamper with it forever. And now it hits him. He decides to brutalize members of parliament for his own sake. Sarah has been talking about Milton Obote surrounding parliament with soldiers. At least Milton Obote stopped outside. Museveni entered the chamber. And you know where you're going to find the biggest form of destruction? It is in the minds of those who know. And the court said that was okay. But before the military men came in, who of us had hit the other? Nobody. That we were making noise. Parliament is for talking. And in a heated debate like that one, there is no way you can avoid talking or even shouting. We had not beaten anyone. We had not fought with each other. But court says it's okay. Kaiwara says, yes, I attacked members of parliament. The same man had 10 years back amended the constitution to remove term limits. Why? Who else had hit 2 terms? It was him. And now, I think feeling threatened, especially by the recent results of the election, the man tells you, I am removing bail. Why? Because he feels politically threatened. Now, whenever there is a threat to the regime, they resort to amending the law to suit their needs. That is the difference between rule of law and rule by law.
Okay.
Even Amin had laws, by the way, as Sarah was saying. Amin made decrees. There were laws. Those were the laws. I mean, which law would you expect without a parliament? Because the foundation had been destroyed. The foundation being that you have usurped the people's power and taken into your hands.
Okay.
So Museveni can, the difference between Museveni and Amin, yesterday I told somebody that I'm trying to read as many books as I possibly can to see the difference between Museveni and Idi Amin. So far this is what I have discovered. That when you look at them, Amin was fatter than Museveni, at least as of now. Idi Amin was taller than Museveni, at least as of now, until Museveni grows taller. But in terms of their methods of work, these guys must have been related.
Okay. Professor Muchemeza, I need you to start by responding to some of those, and especially those of you now that I'm bringing in last after Councillor Sarah and Honorable Segona. You were closer to independence, whether within it or after it, immediately after it. So you were closer and you felt some of these things, at least a means time and coming to now. The NRM stands accused, at least from the point of view of Honorable Segona, of a number of things, causing suffering, causing turbulence, and Sarah says as much. Is that the, and then Segona makes it worse by giving, only physical differences other than, the software. Do you read the same with what your colleagues here who have spoken so far reading into these 59 years of independence?
Thank you, Charles. Maybe before I use my methodology to respond to some of the issues that have been raised, I need to take you back before independence, because independence was a process. Colonialism was established by force, maintained by force, but was resisted. And this is where I want to credit the militant nationalists who really put up a struggle from those who were thinking of requests and put up strong demands for the colonial leaders to have changed course and even agreed to carry out reforms just before 1960. It was not because of pressure. They were put under pressure and they were able to carry out some reforms which enabled Ugandans to have independence. So that credit must be brought up, the whole development of the national movement and how we attained independence. There were expectations from independence, and as I interrogate these expectations, I'll be able to respond to some of the negativity that has been brought out by the honorable colleagues on the panel. I can summarize the expectations into two themes. One, the expectation of political democracy, and two, the expectation of development. So what do I mean by political democracy? There are three important aspects in political democracy. One is contestation or competition to acquire a political office. The second aspect of political democracy is popular participation, where citizens are engaged in decision making, whether directly or through their representatives. And the third aspect of political democracy is respect of civil liberties, and that's where Councillor Segona, I think, has more interest. Respect of civil liberties. You can break this and come up with indicators and even measure and give scores. But that was an important aspect as far as independence was concerned. Now, the second expectation was a development, whether at the level of individual or at the level of society. At the level of individual, of course, people expected to have a better quality of life. And a better quality of life may entail access to basic needs. At the level of society, people expected socio-economic transformation. And you can also come up with measurable indicators. Now, when you look at what has happened since independence up to today, are we seeing only negatives, as my brother and sister have pointed out? I would say no. And why am I saying no? When I was a national athlete in the late 1980s and early 90s, I would go for athletics in Germany, in the United Kingdom, and other places. Two things would be mentioned. General Idi Amin. People would point out some things which were true and others false surrounding his administration. That's what Uganda was known for. The second aspect they would mention was the late Akibua. Those are the two aspects people would mention whenever would be in those international competitions in athletics. But what is happening today? One, we all know for many years Uganda was a great generator of refugees. And this is my area of interest. My PhD was on forced migration and refugees. A great generator. Today, citizens are comfortable in Uganda. You don't have Ugandan refugees, people running away from their country. Even after the capture of power by the NRA for some years, people voted with their feet coming from South Sudan, Congo, and coming back. Now, if Uganda is so bad, if Uganda is so uncomfortable, if Uganda you have gross violation of human rights fundamentally, and I'm not saying there is no violation of human rights in some respects, why would Ugandans feel comfortable to remain here rather than going away as they used to be? I think as we celebrate independence, we must recognize that Ugandans are comfortable in their own country, and that's why they are not refugees. And that's why Uganda is not a generator of refugees. It is actually one of the countries that is respected globally to host refugees. To me, that is a fundamental achievement as we celebrate independence. The other thing Uganda is known for, when you travel, you hear Uganda is a good destination as a tourist center. That's very critical. People are able, whether through websites, they are able to know that this country is very attractive. And if we scale up our advertisement and publicity, and with receding of COVID-19, we should be able to get more tourists. And that is a plus. When you travel, people are talking of Ugandan coffee, Ugandan tea, Ugandan fish. Here we need to increase our production and our marketing skills and meet the demand at the global market. Because if we are looking at the generation of foreign exchange, actually it is not the East African market or the commercial market that is going to lead into our transformation. We need to tap into the global market. And our coffee, our tea, our fish are on high demand. So we need now to scale up production and enter into the global market. Uganda is known for its products. When you travel all over Africa, you will hear of Uganda People's Defense Forces. Why? Because of its activities in peacekeeping missions in Somalia and elsewhere. UPDF has made us proud. And the civil-military relations are also good. My brother Segona would agree that civil-military relations within this time of NRM and the previous, it has gone a step higher. So people talk of UPDF, its activities, and its contribution. That's an area you are proud of. You would hear, as you travel, people would talk of the sports. Our sportsmen and women are conquering the world in the middle and long distance. And this is an area where, even when you're in Parliament, you really see unity. You see unity. What we need to do is now to put in more training facilities and facilitation of athletes, and we shall conquer the world. You know, these achievements do not happen by accident. It's because of the environment that has been put in place so that people can excel in various aspects. Even having a debate of this nature, like we are having now, and you feel comfortable that after midnight, even when there is curfew, you drive your car, you only need to identify yourself. I'm a citizen, I've been on the UBC panel, and I'm going home. I'm sure security forces will understand. They will not arrest you because you are going beyond the curfew time. So this kind of stability and the confidence and comfort you have within your own country in such a period is a plus. So I could go on and on. Yes, there are some excesses by our security agencies. That one I agree. There are some excesses, and we have seen them. I cannot deny them. But this does not mean that we are in total dictatorship. This does not mean that the country has gone to, some people say, to the dogs. No. They are really observable achievements.
Actually,
they are also...
Elijah, some say that the country has not gone to the dogs, that the dogs have come.
Whatever that may be, the point I'm making is that in spite of the challenges and the shortcomings we may have, either through excesses of our security agencies or because of excesses by overzealous cadres, this does not mean that we have not made great achievements.
Okay.
So I really wouldn't want to take the negative approach my brother and sister are taking. We need to have an objective and balanced debate as we look at our journey right from the colonial period through the immediate post-independence period up to the present day, where we need to work together and address the challenges so that we can enjoy the fruits or the expectations, and we meet the expectations we had at independence.
Thank you so much, Professor. Your colleague, Professor Ogenga Latigo, how do you look at it from your viewpoint? You have been an active actor in this as at a level of a LOP, as an MP, but you are a professor and you study these things going on. What's your view of independence that we are going to be celebrating on Saturday?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the perspectives that have been given. These are all the Ugandan perspective. But for me, I ask myself, if at my age now, at one time, I used to drink, and I no longer drink. But that drinking stopped me from going to school, and my value in society has collapsed. Then what is the value in living that drinking? I'm an ecologist, and in ecology we have a field where we do what they call key factor analysis. That when many things that you see happening can be influenced by like 100 factors. But at any one moment, maybe only 1 or 2 factors are important. When you deal with those, you create dramatic changes. And independence came when I was already in primary. I remember going to the sub-county headquarters. They cooked food for everybody. The kids had soda and biscuits. And there was euphoria. There was hope. But what was that hope? The hope was that with the Wazungus gone, we'll do better for ourselves than the exploitative nature of the colonial governance. But if you sit now and ask yourself, throughout the 59 years, how many of the years did we realize those expectations? And that is a fundamental question. Independence came, DP was in opposition. I come from a DP place. My father-in-law was a member of parliament at independence, Gino Bonyo. And then you started seeing this African thing which is disturbing us. We had government doing the roads from Karamoja, and they reached the boundary of Agago. And they said, UDPs, look for your equipment. And the Minister of Works was Anacholi, Eric Lakidi. And they carried the tractors and bypassed our place. I asked myself, has that changed? No. The beautiful things my brother Prof is enumerating, if you say you spread that, what you are talking about, spread it out throughout the country, do you get a map of uniformity? You will not. You know, but even when there was a UPC government, when they were building hospitals, they looked for the places that needed hospitals and built. Anaka, for example, was one of the hospitals built. That Anaka was part of a legal team's constituency. They did not isolate it and say, let them look for their things. After 59 years, the biggest tragedy of this country is that we have not sat down to honestly and collectively ask ourselves, how well have we done? Where did we go wrong? Where can we do well? And from here, where do we want to go? Every regime that comes into power will redefine the Ugandan context. Every regime will set its own objectives, and if you don't agree with it, you are an enemy. And for me, that is my worst experience in politics. That Ugandan politics is about enmity. It's not about contestation of ideas and aspirations, which is legitimate. We cannot all have the same aspirations. But if I think that what I'm looking for works, allow me to put it on the table, explain it clearly, and to hold you accountable when you fail on account of not listening to me. That if, when you fail, I must not speak. Uganda can be independent for the next 100 years. We'll just be what we are. And by the way, Prof, at independence, and even when we were young people, Uganda was a totally different country. You didn't describe it, but I'm sure you probably experienced it. Even during Amin's time, you know, as students in Lumumba, you were served a table. And you'd get, for breakfast, you'd get eggs and butter during Amin's time. As students in secondary school, the only time you paid for transport until I came to university was when you are going to school for the first time, senior one. After that, you traveled on bus warrant. The state paid for your transport. The places that didn't have schools, Karamoja, they built Moroto High. Kitgum, they built Kitgum High. Because even in spite of their politics, they were still thinking about this is one body. If you think you are ahead and you can ignore the foot, how will you walk? And unfortunately, after 59 years, we're a country that is still asking itself, who are we? And where do we want to go? And we need to sit down particularly next year as we celebrate 60 years of independence. Let our leaders allow Ugandans to sit down and ask those basic questions. Who are we? Where have we been? And where can we go? and if we could, like the instrument of independence which Obote received in Kololo, if we could come out with a new instrument of national aspiration and national commitment, not commitment to a party or to some individual, but to this country, and say, let us consider the 60 years gone. It will not come back. But we have another 30. And this is our instrument of collective commitment. Then maybe the things that have happened in the 59 years of our independence would have had value.
Okay. Let me now, I'm going to open up the debate. Feel free and to interject if a person, one of your colleagues is making a statement and you want to inform him or her, just feel free so that we keep it, you know, an easy, you know, exchange of ideas. Honorable Segona, Professor Mushemeza referred to expectations and these different expectations of development and of democracy. And someone listening out there would say, yes, I think that's true. Perhaps expectations might be too high, maybe they were too broad, maybe issues came up, you know, eventually after you have set yourself on the journey and you had set up your expectations. What would you respond to that, especially in light with the questions by his colleague, Professor Ogenga Latigo, that where are we? How much have we achieved?
No, I think it is important to know that we are talking about political, social, economic survival of our country. When Professor Mushemeza speaks of, for example, moving away from the biggest producer of refugees to the biggest recipients, I think it was just a change of terminology from political refugees to economic refugees. For example, ask yourself how many economic refugees we are producing annually, including the underage. Going to Oman, going to Saudi Arabia, going to UAE, name them.
Actually slaves.
Yes, we're actually producing slaves now. And to me, that's worse. Charles Odongtho.
What is the difference between labor migration and a refugee? When you have been forced against your will.
Now, yes, I agree. Now, the political scientist thinks that forcing you means whipping you. The same way the police come around whipping people to enforce curfew. No. These young graduates that leave the university after their parents have sold land to take them to school are forced out of their country. Nobody wants to go to be whipped wherever they go. You remember time when it was all over news that our girls have been returned limping because of the mistreatment they received there. A number of them returned in the coffins, and that is if you were lucky to have
And they are still dying.
returned. There are so many. That's number one.
But my brother, you cannot reduce unemployment to be for only Uganda.
And that's where I'm coming. You see, if you compare yourself with the worst, then you're one of the worst. You see, President Museveni has been saying, I'm not like Idi Amin. I'm not like Milton Obote. I'm not like Tito Okello Lutwa. But he's never said, I am like Nelson Mandela. I am like Chisano. No. He's comparing himself with the worst. Meaning, in their generic string, he could be at the tail end. But he's one of the worst. And that's what he's admitting. Number two, without sorting out the basic question of governance, and good governance I mean, you cannot talk about independence. A question of governance, you know, the Russians, the Americans, etc. are going to the moon. For you, you're struggling with the basic question of succession, whether a president can peacefully leave office and another person comes.
Or should even leave.
Or should even leave. Because talking about it, this gentleman, next, my brother, is a professor, and a professor of political science. Let him just one day or tomorrow announce that he wants to contest for the NRM chairmanship. That's when he will see whether we are independent or not. As a young man growing up, I visited Gombe Hospital where my aunt was admitted.
Gombe.
In 1980, Gombe.
Yeah.
And I was a young man. I still have that image of a young man visiting and seeing a very clean hospital. Very clean. Okay? Around, I think it was lunchtime, and we are used to having lunch at 1 o'clock. Those people, dressed in very neat uniforms, white, brought posho and Irish potatoes and served the patient, the attendant, and those of us who had simply come to pick my auntie to take her to Entebbe. Okay? Milton Obote, with that small economy, was able to build, I'm told, 20-something hospitals across the country. And mark the word, across the country. The current regime, which is talking about, and proudly talking about, collection of trillions of money, cannot even repair or paint them. Go to the hospitals I'm talking about, Gombe, Itojo, Kaolo, you will find them roofed with asbestos, which has been condemned by the World Health Organization. In school, I think I was in primary 2 when they came. Obote II government, at the peak of war, was able to send books to school, textbooks, and even exercise books, not for sale, government of Uganda, something of the nature. Okay, a government at war. This government is not at war. But ask how much is going into defense, or what they call classified security. And that is for survival of an individual. So without sorting out the issue of governance, where you have an election in the year 2021, and it's like the country is at war between an old man and a young man. Ask yourself, how many young people died in this recent election? Young people, not holding a gun. But as long as you're contesting against somebody holding a gun, and you're threatening him, or you're threatening the emperor, you remember what he talked about, something of the leopard. After 59 years, and you're probably talking about 59 years, for us in the law sector, if you are to ask for bail currently before they change the constitution, one of the key grounds for obtaining bail is if you prove that you're a man or woman of advanced age. And advanced age starts at 50, going by the precedents. So at the age 59, Uganda would be considered a country of advanced age, and therefore eligible for bail. Now, a country that is of advanced age is saying, no, we're a young democracy. We're growing democracy. Gentlemen, ask how many people, he's talking about the indiscriminate killings in the Obote, I mean, it is, I can't speak for those governments. One, I am not a player. I have not contributed to that past turbulence you're talking about. General Yoweri Museveni has been an active player in those turbulences you're talking about. Yes, I'm a very happy and proud man that I can live here with some chances of getting home.
Hi.
Yes, call them high or even higher.
But why should it be?
But why should it be a chance?
Why should I even be celebrating that I will be going home?
Yeah.
That I'll be going at my house? And I should celebrate that? First of all, yes, I am told, during the days of Milton Obote, Idi Amin, it would be difficult. First, don't blame those ones alone. They were wrong, first of all. But somebody was in the bush fighting. Are we at war?
Who made it difficult?
So he made the lives of those presidents difficult and therefore tackled their nerves. Today, touch Museveni's nerve by threatening his power. You will see if he cannot conduct himself worse than Amin.
Okay. Thanks. Sarah, we are about to go to the break, but...
Finally, just before,
yes.
Charles, my brother talks about we used to export coffee, etc. He's talking at a time, how much is a kilogram of coffee? 2,000. And we are walking out of the international coffee agreement. I think it was announced about 3 days back. And you're talking about promoting your coffee, your Ugandan coffee, when you're not associating with people who will guarantee quality and market. Actually, we're driving in reverse gear.
Okay, Sarah, the environment that we operate in. I know there are many people who, like even here you have expressed it, that it's wrong to even think of comparison in terms with the West. But how else can we learn that we are in a better situation if not by comparison and comparison of, of scope, maybe time of the past and going forward or now. That we have improved is what Professor is arguing and what many other political actors, especially in government, argue. Is the circumstance we find ourselves in not improving at all, or we are improving too slowly?
Charles, we are discussing independence. I want to simplify independence for the young majority Ugandans, because majority of our population, by the way, between 1 year and 15 years, 0 to 15 years. But the next majority is 15 to 30.
To 30, 35.
Yes, but unfortunately, an example I'm going to use is for the elite young people. Let's look at independence in a way a child goes to university. In kindergarten, primary, secondary school, you can't even make a decision, or even if you make a decision, you discuss with your parents and seek their consent. But in university, you leave a bit of freedom. So let's take the minimum freedom a university student enjoys to evaluate whether Uganda is independent or not. Because you cannot say that you are independent. For example, if you put yourself in the shoes of Honorable Segona and the people on the other side of politics, the violence they've just expressed, experienced in the last elections, the kidnaps, the torture, the killings, the frustrations, their colleagues have just been kidnapped, members of parliament.
We're talking about state-sponsored killings.
Members of parliament, these are colleagues of Professor Mshemeza. Today, police were saying they don't even know who kidnapped them. And police were saying we cannot arrest through kidnaps. So this is the kind of independence we are evaluating, Professor Mshemeza. Yes, things could be good, but good to who? And where are you standing? Can you put your shoes, can you put yourself in the shoes of majority people and then make a balanced assessment? Professor was saying we should be balanced. I'm also making a call to him not to look at where he's standing. Can he be balanced? Because as a political actor and a professor of political science at that, if today you were teaching students and you are giving them examples of a democratic country, would you make the same submission to a class? Because what are principles of a democratic country? Civil liberties, fundamental rights and freedoms. As we discussed today, there is a push to take away personal liberty, presumption of innocence, equality under the law. So, and this is the nature that we are, of the country we are assessing. In a democratic country, Charles, the source of authority is the Constitution. I'm sure that beyond theoretical terms, all of us here can confirm that the constitution is not the source of authority in this country. We have two centers of power, and both of them are not constitutional, and not, their power is not derived from the constitution, the power that they exercise. The source of authority in this country is the military and the family in power, the president's family. Even the role of the prime minister has reversed. The practical role of the prime minister is seated in Guru. You get somebody with not in a formal government, and he's coordinating a government business. Then, so, yes, and yes, no vote, no authority, no legal status. He's a prime minister, and Nabanja goes to him for instructions. And this is a democratic country that we are talking about today. So once you have authority that is not derived from the constitution and is being exercised to the extent of even committing taxpayers' money, then you cannot talk of progress as a country. And these things are happening. Members of parliament are here. They are just watching.
Okay. Let's take a break right now, and when we come back, of course, Honorable Mushemeza will respond to some of the issues as the debate goes on, and this is Behind the Headlines. If you want to join the discussion from after the break, feel free. The numbers to call, the numbers to send your questions or comments to, we have 0709 602 592, 0709 602 592. But through Twitter, our hashtag is hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. But we are also broadcasting live the discussion on YouTube, and that is UBC Television Uganda. Let's go for a break right now. This is Behind the Headlines. Keep with us.
I smile when I think of you, Uganda, my home. My home, I dance when I look at you, Uganda, my home. Oh, my Uganda.
I know, with you I'll always stay forever. I know, because I feel that we belong together. My home.
At MTN, we look forward to starting another exciting journey together to grow our home, Uganda.
Vaccinated today so we can get closer to the normal way of life. Echa COVID-19 chija kugwa.
could just buy a new smartphone from anywhere in Uganda. Dial *175 *94 hash to activate their 100% double data bonus offer on weekly or monthly bundles for 3 months. Better yet, you automatically receive free 1 GB valid for 30 days. You are hooked already, aren't you? Enjoy 100% double data bonus from Airtel. Buy a smartphone from anywhere in Uganda and insert an Airtel SIM card. Dial *175 *94 hash to activate a 100% data bonus offer on weekly or monthly bundles, valid for 3 months. Dial *175 hash and select your preferred bundle to activate a 100% data bonus offer on weekly or monthly bundles, valid for 3 months. Airtel, the smartphone network.
The Uganda High Commission to Kenya and Seychelles and the Consulate General of Uganda in Mombasa are jointly organizing Uganda Independence Week in Kenya with the theme Securing Uganda's Future Through Promotion of Tourism and Education for the Economic Development. To celebrate the 59th Independence Anniversary, there will be an exhibition at the Nairobi Serena Hotel from 4th to 9th of October 2021 to showcase the enormous tourism and education opportunities in Uganda. The exhibition will mainly showcase Uganda's vast tourism offers, options and potentials, as well the country's affordable, accessible and quality education. The hybrid exhibition will have a virtual segment from the 4th to the 6th of October and a physical segment from the 7th to the 9th of October, and will be crowned with an independence banquet dinner at Nairobi Serena Hotel on Saturday evening of the 9th of October 2021. The event will strictly follow the COVID-19 standard operating procedures of the Government of Kenya and will be live on UG Week in Kenya, announced by the Uganda High Commission, Nairobi and Uganda Consulate in Mombasa.
My home, I smile when I think of you, Uganda. My home. My home, I dance when I look at you, Uganda. My home, oh my Uganda.
I know with you I'll always stay forever. I know, because I feel that we belong together. My home, under the sun so bright, under the moon at night, on my heart. Mommy, oh my Uganda.
Hey mama,
my Uganda.
Oh,
my Uganda.
Oh,
my Uganda. My Uganda. Nigokone. My Uganda. Amari, Alemira. My Uganda.
nyoe nikugonza.
My Uganda.
Amina ngojo, Amina ngojo.
At MTN, we look forward to starting another exciting journey together to grow our home, Uganda.
We are back on air. This is Behind the Headlines here on UBC Television, and we are discussing 59 years of Uganda's independence. Some people argue that it's not independence, that it's self-rule. But what is the difference really? It's still independence or it's self-rule as we know it. And the personalities in the studio discussing this, Professor Mushemeza, Elijah, Honorable Segona, Honorable Professor Ogenga Latigo, Council Sarah Birete, and before we went into the break, I told you if you want to communicate your questions or comments, I'll find time through the middle of this segment and read your comments and share with the viewer out there. On YouTube, you can. We are streaming live on UBC Television Uganda, and then you can also join us via hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, but on that's on Twitter, and then you can also send your message through 0709 602592. I repeat that, 0709 602592. Before we went for the break, Professor Elijah, you had got a lot of take from your colleagues, especially Sarah and Honorable Segona. The issue that you need to respond to include some of the, maybe just give us more beef on some things that you talk about, like excesses, and you're saying that this is not the design, as it were, but you know, here and there incidences. But the question is that your colleague Professor Ogenga-Latigo asked is, where are we? Have we done so well in the last 59 years? And that, out of that 59, majority of it, 35, 36 now, belongs to NRM that you are part of, which is our current ruling government. So where do we start saying that, you know, we have achieved so little in so much a time?
Thank you, Charles. I begin by responding to my elder brother, Professor Latigo. You know, he is pushing a narrative that as if we have no direction, we need to come together and sit and see where to go. If you look at our constitution, the national objectives and principles of state policy, you may call it a common good. Real issues are very well articulated, whether in the political aspect, in the economic, social, and cultural aspect. I don't think even if you had what is popularly known in the opposition circles as a national dialogue, even if you had to have what they call a national dialogue, whether you would have much better articulation of Uganda's aspirations than what is provided in the Constitution, in the national objectives and principles of state policy.
And that is not my point. My point is that we have not done what we claim.
Yes, I'm coming there.
Because it has to be clear. You can have all these beautiful things. If you don't do it, it will not come.
I'm coming there. Because, you see, when you say lack of direction, you must begin from what have you prepared for yourself to guide you. Now, if you move away from the Constitution and you look at the Vision 2040 and how it is consistent with the African Union Vision of 2060, and again compare with our National Development Plan from the transition of NDP 1, NDP 2, and NDP 3, you really see consistency and you see a vision. So when President Museveni says NRM has a vision, no doubt there is a vision.
What is it that we have achieved in terms of implementing those visions?
I'm coming to that. You must start somewhere. I'm coming to that. So my first response, Professor Latigo, is that there is a direction. There is a vision. There are guiding principles, both written and in articulation, on where we are going. We can sit on how we see how we are implementing these aspirations, but the direction is there. That is my first response. Now, my brother...
But also, Professor, maybe just to keep with that point a bit, you know that there is a common fear or even suspicion that across Africa, Uganda is known for, is actually notorious, as we say in law, well known for putting in place very well-written documents. Like Honorable Segona talked about the Constitution. But the question that always begs is how much of that well-written, well-intentioned, well-envisioned idea is translated into action, which in constitutional terms we refer to constitutionalism, the practice, which is what translates into changing the quality of life. How much of that?
See, I'm coming to that. You see, my brother Segona was trying to relate our shortcomings in economic achievements to be because of our governance deficits. But if you want to appreciate where Uganda has come from and where it is, then you have to put it on a comparative analysis with other African states. You must be conversant with the economic hardships African states have been facing right from the time of the structured adjustment programs. The structured adjustment programs were introduced because many of the beyond even Africa, many of the developing countries were facing economic hardships. And that's why the Bretton Woods institutions were coming up with these responses, which of course did not work. And if you want to appreciate that Uganda is not alone, and I know you are talking of comparison is very vital. Look at Tanzania. Tanzania is a country that had good leadership at independence. Tanzania is a country that has not had wars like we have had. Tanzania has been very, very prominent on the world scene. Even the late Nyerere was the chairperson of the South-South Commission. Developing countries came together to see what was their problem and how they could solve it. Now the question is, why has Tanzania not transformed like you would say the Tigers? Yet has not had war, it has had good leadership. You need to look at the external variables. The external forces that...
You don't forget that Tanzania was under communism for a long time.
No, there was no communism, except that there were some tendencies of socialist approach. What type of communism would you have talked of Tanzania? There was no communism in Tanzania. Nyerere was articulating a program that would address the needs of the common man in relation to the few, what you would call national capitalists that were emerging and whom he thought were going to exploit the majority of the people.
And did he propel capitalism?
No, but you wouldn't say it was socialism. It wasn't. But let me go back to the point. The point I'm making is that Tanzania has not fundamentally transformed, because you need to understand the context Tanzania has been operating within Africa. So when you are looking at Uganda, you cannot limit its deficits in terms of the economy because of the governance deficits here. You need to look at that international terrain and how it affects all the developing countries and makes Uganda also having these other problems. But let me come to the issue of the human rights, which was mentioning. We have checks and balances in terms of the institutions of the state. Now, when our colleagues were arrested and in an inhuman way, how did other institutions of the state respond? For example, the legislature. That day I was in attendance. The Speaker of Parliament demanded from the executive to explain the circumstances. The Prime Minister had to explain. Parliament also directed one of the committees to move around the country and find what is causing some aspects of insecurity. Because Uganda is generally stable, but we have pockets of insecurity. So the institution of Parliament, the way it responded when our colleagues were arrested, that shows that there is some checks and balances within. It is not that all state institutions connive to do wrong things. When one mistake is made by one arm of government, we have other arms of government.
You want to say mistake is made continuously and persistently?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we have seen where institutions of the state, in terms of checks and balances, have responded in restoring the fundamentals of human rights. Even if you talk of this issue which is on of the bail, how did the NRM caucus respond? The debate in the NRM caucus, the emphasis was that let's strengthen our investigative processes so that before you arrest any citizen, you have done investigation, then you can take somebody to court. So even within political parties like NRM, you see democratic debates going on issues which you would consider so sensitive within the public realm. So the point I'm making is that yes, there are some excesses, but we have checks and balances within the system which we can strengthen and rely on to address some of these excesses. Because it would be unfair for my colleagues to paint a very gloomy picture. And I'm not saying we should just keep quiet about some of these excesses, but painting a gloomy picture where we are seeing progress, I really I wouldn't buy that. Okay. Again, if you look at the issue what he was calling slaves, if you have been to the Middle East and see the people who are coming to work in the Middle East, actually Uganda could be the lowest. People from Malaysia, people from Indonesia, people from Ghana, people from all over the world taking the opportunities of employment. So you are not going to limit that to, actually I would encourage more Ugandans who are unemployed to go to the Middle East and work and bring money here. I don't have a problem with that. But this does not mean that we should not create more employment opportunities here through industrialization. We should. But wherever the opportunities are, we should go for them.
Professor, are you aware about the suffering of our fellow citizens, especially young people in the Middle East? Are you aware of the human rights violations? Are you aware of the human trafficking going on in the name of seeking employment? And why would you encourage young people to go into this misery, where some of them have unfortunately not survived, to go without government putting in place enabling conditions for Ugandans to work abroad like other countries?
You see, that one you have a point that we should put a neighboring environment. I know Ministry of Gender and Labor and Social Development has been engaging government of Saudi Arabia, and they have been streamlining certain things. But not everybody is suffering. Sometimes you watch videos, people are in a hall with smartphones, taking pictures, taking videos. We are suffering. What type of suffering is that? But sometimes some people fail to cope up with the conditions, and then they are put in waiting centers to be brought. And they have all these facilities, they have internet, and somebody is crying. I don't accept that kind of deception. Because when you go abroad to work, you are not like in your home here, where you are going to find a matoke. No, you have to tighten your belt. You must know why you went. But I agree with you, Sarah, that government can do more in streamlining and putting conditions so that our people who go outside to work work in better conditions. I
want to bring in Professor Genga, but just one quick question. You talked about key factor analysis, and someone on one of the viewers says, hi Charles, thanks for the best show in the land. The person is called Mwebana, and he asks, it is long, so I will just pick the part of the question. He says, Professor Mushemeza, talk about the welfare of educationists, quality of graduates, the quality of graduates that the so many schools and universities produce. How much does a professor averagely earn? Does it reflect the 59 years of independence, in your view?
what the professor has been earning has been so little. But now, at the moment, it has been put to 50 million gross, 50 Ugandan shillings, 50 million. I think that's not bad for us.
Are we in the same country? 50 million.
15. 15 million. For a start, given our economy, that's not bad when you look at what others are earning in the economy. And there are not many professors, by the way. I don't know why our government delayed even to implement this, because there are very few. There are very few. So the payment, given the status of the economy, it is not bad. But what we may need to do beyond professors earning, we need to look at the whole issue of emoluments of citizens. There is a lot of disparities. You would find a driver earning more than a council, and I think we need to address this.
At some point, Justice Benjamin Odoki told our Committee on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs that he wanted to apply for a job at KCCA as a driver, because the driver at KCCA was earning 2 million more than the Chief Justice of the land.
That was the time that the Chief Justice was
that
earning
one, I
5
think,
million.
as a panel, we agree.
The driver of KCC was earning 7.
Absolutely.
So as a panel, I think we agree there that we need to move very fast as a country and address these inequalities, because it undermines even professionalism, education, and we don't want to go to a situation in the past where people would say, "Nasomawa," because I'm earning better than those who are educated. That one we agree. We need to address that inequality.
Okay, Professor Ogenga, I need us to also comment, when we talk of this 50, so many years of independence, there is the question that looms large on a country like Uganda. This nice euphemism called, this euphemism, development partners. You're really begging as a country that we are keeping with it so many years after. What's your take about it? Is it sustainable that we have to keep a country in a begging situation, and even going forward that we don't have, you don't see a future in the next 5 years of getting out of this, at least up to about 80%?
And Charles, Professor kept promising us, actually he kept coming, I don't know whether he's still coming, on the issues that we raised. You talk about the National Development Plan, transiting from 1 to 2, etc. And I kept asking him, how much of those have we achieved? And he kept promising, no, I'm coming to that. And you see, forget about the name. Go to the components of those NDPs that you're talking about and tell me which of those we have achieved. NRM promised a self-sustaining economy in its 10-point program, which eventually reduced, I think, to 4 or 2.
Which increased to 15.
To 15, they keep fluctuating. Tell me, which of those components have we achieved in your National Development Plan?
I can respond to that. I don't know what Charles says. Can I respond, or is...
You can request Professor Latigo
I think you see the professor is responding not as a Ugandan leader, and that is the problem. He's responding as an NRM, and I would not want to debate him as an NRM, as opposition, because that independence had no label of UPC, DP, or anything. It was a Ugandan independence. And that is where the focus must be. I've seen a lot. I can even start from the university thing. Last Monday, I just submitted my report. I examined a PhD thesis from a career as an external examiner. I was furious. And when I sent my report, I called the leaders there, And what did the leaders say? Said, Professor, you're right, there's despondency. Now, and that's the challenge that we face. Whether you have development partners, if you yourselves are not doing things that will develop you, it doesn't matter how many partners you have. If I sat here, you talk about where we have come from. Go to Rwanda. Because you said it is okay to compare, but I know comparing us with Rwanda, some people don't like. But go to Rwanda and see. Yes, the political thing, you can say they're dictators. Yes, they kill opponents there. But fundamentally, the things that need to be done, the accountability for the money and the responsibilities that people are given, you can go and see them. You go to Rwanda, you find clean streets. You go and find buildings coming. You talk about tourism. Go to Kigali, you get this Radisson, these international hotels. Where do we have here? Which are symptoms that the international community recognizes that what we are doing in this country is sustainable long term. But, you know, I was one of the people who wrote the Uganda Vision 2025. It was never implemented. I used to write for UNDP, the annual Uganda Human Development Reports. The one for 88, 89 was towards rural transformation. And to be able to do that, I read the background to the budget and the budget speeches from 1960 to 1997. I read the Uganda National Development Plans. You know, those days, when the Minister of Finance was reading the budget, he will say that last year we planned to raise university entrance from 400 to 600, and we provided 400 million shillings. I'm happy to report that we raised university entrance to 800. We spent only 400 million, and the 200 million that remains, we are going to commit to this. Just sit and listen to your budget speech, whether you can see any commitment that you will define that with this year's budget, tomorrow Uganda will move from this place to the other. If we don't stop it, unfortunately, Uganda now, which are our leagues? DR Congo, South Sudan, and Somalia. We can't compare ourselves with Rwanda. We can't compare ourselves with Tanzania. We can't compare ourselves with Kenya. Go and see the infrastructure there. The people who are doing that, we are even far more wealthy as a country in terms of our potential. This coffee thing, you know, it's so painful. In that towards rural transformation analysis, Uganda used to give between 20 and 26% of its annual budget to agriculture. And all of us here can attest to the fact that they are where they are because of the agriculture. They didn't steal money. But it didn't just happen. They put money there. They had extension people, the Bugisho guys. Government did not give people money, mioga. They had a crew that would spray the coffee. And he had top quality coffee coming out of Bugisho. Karamoja, every year they know when the dry season comes, this foot and mouth or whatever will come. There will be vaccination programs. The entire Karamoja, nobody pays a cent. And when you did that, you branded the animals. So a cow which is from Nakapiripirit would have a different brand from a cow from the other place. So even tracing stolen cows were easy. You know, you can name it. And we can actually do it if we want to. Instead of spending our time sitting and saying we have arrived. Where have we arrived? In this poverty? As a member of the Agriculture Committee, by the way, I come from the north, and the illusion that we have from the north is that if you go to Western Uganda, it is milk and honey that flows. We went to Nyabusozi, Agriculture Committee, and we went to the villages. I was shocked. I'm telling you, I was shocked, and that is the president's place. So sometimes
why were you shocked?
I couldn't believe the kind of poverty that I saw there even. The disparity. So really you, Prof.
Now, I think just I have to come in at this point.
He passed the baton to you, actually.
You know, let's go to the basics. Uganda is self-sufficient in terms of food. Even when one area lacks food.
But that is by God's
Yes, we
grace.
don't go, like if say...
not the result...
When one part of the country...
we need to be clear with that. Not the result of any government intervention.
No, you see, Charles.
No.
You asked me a question, all of you have been asking me a question. How much have we achieved in terms of national development plan?
Yeah.
I'm now opening.
Please do.
You see, food. Even when there is lack of food somewhere, government does not go to Tanzania or Rwanda to buy food.
True.
And why is that? Because the environment, the stability enables people to produce food, even during lockdown.
And your government wants to take credit for that?
Why not?
When that is God given?
During, I mean, we did not produce.
So, that is food. And they all agree there is food. Whether you call it God given.
The biggest survival that we had during Amin's time was that you will not die of hunger.
So, even coffee. Number two.
During Amin's time.
Yes, because you have asked me what has this...
You will die from a bullet.
Yes,
but not from hunger.
Two, I can drive from Chisoro. You are talking of infrastructure. And I will not say we have arrived, but we are on course.
Okay.
I can drive from Chisoro up to via Amuru. What is that border? Eregu. I can drive from Busia up to Kasese. There is a fundamental improvement.
How much of that has been funded with our money and not loans?
But you see, a loan cannot achieve itself. There must be leadership.
The point is that that's not your money. It is borrowed money.
It is no. Don't interrupt me, because you know, don't put yourself outside. You have been in Parliament.
True.
Several. You are the one who passed these loans.
Yes.
So these are loans acquired by. These are loans acquired by the state.
True.
Don't just push them only to the NRM. You are part of it. So yes. No.
Information.
I'm enumerating how much we have achieved, because that's the question you have.
How much of that money is borrowed?
Professor, me and you come from what used to be the former Busheng, and I'm not reducing this debate to our local example. Just for demonstration. You know, Busheng used to be known as a model district, but now we top malnutrition statistics, we top jiggers in the jiggers pandemic.
You have jiggers also in Busheng now?
Yes.
No, that was an isolated family in one of the villages. Then you cannot magnify it as...
You people have been blaming only Busoga for jiggers. Now you have jiggers in Busheng.
That as a demonstration. So even as we see, we have food. I'm sure when the nutritionist release the malnutrition map, you are able to send it to not only Busheng. I'm just using it as an example. So yes, we have food and we have food security, but what has happened to the food security cycle or the food system cycle under NRM? Our houses used to have silos, our houses used to have internally built mechanisms for food security. Do we still have them? How many families are threatened with land grabbing and have no land to plant food even for subsistence. So these are the issues we should interrogate.
I don't know whether
Professor, respond.
Yes, I don't know whether she goes home regularly. But if you go to her own area where she comes from at household level, not all household levels have transformed into commercial agriculture. But you'll find most of the households in where she comes from, every house, they have a radio, they have a bicycle, they have, you'll find some animals. You know, it is not as grim as she says. We have not arrived.
We shouldn't.
But let me go back.
Now.
Let me go back to the achievements of these national development plans. That was the issue, because my brother here was saying,
sorry to interrupt you, Professor. I really apologize, and I want to give you ample time to explain. I thought she started, the context of her point is that we were a model district at a national level. And I know that Bushenyi, more than any other district in Western, and which translates into national placement, was the leading district in terms of development indicators across board. Education, and you know that, Professor, some people even politically have been complaining, including people from Barara and Tungamo areas, that Bushenyi alone would get like 6 senior cabinet positions. Why? Among other things, it's, you know, level of exposure from the early days, even Obote days, you see. So Sarah's point is coming from that angle, that it was a model district at a national level and therefore cannot be, you know, talked about in the same realm as other districts we are talking about jiggers. That's below them.
There are now 5 districts from the former Bushenyi.
So Sarah, tell us, which one did you mean?
If you go to each of those districts, so we have not arrived, but those fundamentals are still there. Come to my district, Shema, and you see the factory that is exporting coffee right now. You see? Look at even the results of primary living examination, UCE, and people who come to government scholarship. If you go to the Greater Bushenyi, you still find those excellencies. They are still available.
Okay.
So it's not lost.
It is good you talked about education.
It is not lost.
It is the admission for Gulu University Medical School is just out. And we have been sharing in our platform.
Yeah.
Gulu University is in Gulu.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, if you go and find 2 Acholis in medical school in Gulu, then the next election we will give all our votes to the Muslim Masons. When I joined Makerere, from one school, Sir Samuel Baker alone, there were 6 medical students in this place. Now we have a university in Gulu and we can't even have 2 medical actually in that medical school.
You know,
that is the progress.
Charles, I want to refer Professor
but you have interrupted
to this
me,
year's
Charles.
household survey by
UBOS.
UBOS, yes. The population owning radios is 32%, down from 45% in 2015.
That is progress.
Households owning computer is 2%. Households operating business is 31%, down from 38% in 2017. So this includes subsistence agriculture.
But you see, Sarah, I'm not saying we have arrived, but the fact that we have an institution that can produce these statistics and available, that shows that we're on course in planning. At least you can know where you have shortcomings, where you have weaknesses, where you can improve. But I was still enumerating where I think we have made progress.
We are discussing where we have improved.
Yes, that's where now.
Not
because
where we can improve.
Even in UBOS, we are going down on every indicator.
Down from this to this.
Let me take you to another area where I think we have improved.
Yeah.
When I was young, one of the threats in my village was measles. Parents would even produce extra children knowing that some will die. I think one area under the, for the last 20 years where we have fundamentally improved is in the area of immunization. And that contributes.
How much Uganda money went into
When do you
that?
do immunization?
But you see, development partners cannot bring money to a government they think is wrong.
Oh my God.
For development partners to commit their money in the society, there must be a working relationship and confidence.
Okay, if there were no donations, how many people would you think would be vaccinated?
Why shouldn't there be donations if there is a good working relationship?
Now I know. I know.
No. Let me make the point. You asked me where we have improved. I'm saying in terms of immunization and protecting our children as a country, which is translated in population growth.
Which country have you beaten on immunization?
We have done very well.
No, which country did you beat? Because immunization is a worldwide thing. There's no country which is left behind.
I think what Professor should be saying is that we have succeeded in having our children immunized by other people. Not saying we have immunized. But when you talk about roads, the road network you're proud of, one, that is borrowed money, a large portion of which has been swindled. That's number one. I remember a time when the Minister for Works...
ask yourself, if you get all those roads he's talking about and divide by the years that the NRM has been
35 years.
How many kilometers of tarmac road have they been building? The tarmac road from Gulu to Kampala was built by Obote and completed in the first year of Amin in 3 years.
But I thought recently Museveni, the UNRWA did more.
The repairing. No, I want you to compare the road network that has been tarmacked, that has been tarmacked, compare with the road network that one is bad maram. Okay? That's number one. Number two, how much money was being collected by Idi Amin and Milton Obote vis-a-vis the amount of money collected by Museveni as Minister for Finance. Okay? Number three, talk about the debts that we have contracted during Museveni vis-a-vis the amount of debt that was accumulated by the preceding governments combined.
And this regime has benefited from 2 debt waivers.
Yes.
Exactly.
But so still we are above the
highly
recommended
indebted
threshold.
I think the debate that Professor is engaged in is what we are planning. You're telling me that you have spent the last 35 or now 36 years of government preparing what you're going to do. Maybe it is consistent with the 50-year plan that we had about. That for us,
but even time is catching up.
No, in 36 years we are planning.
Yes,
you see,
14 years
the honorable colleagues have been at the center of distribution of this resource.
As
Honorable
MPs.
Ratigo was the leader of opposition.
Yeah.
And he did very well. His record is still standing. My brother, Honorable Segona, has been in Parliament for how many Visanjas?
How many do you count?
Over 4.
This
now, they have been part.
This is the third.
They have been part of budgeting and appropriation of state resources in these projects. Now, when they try to push me on the wall, somebody who has been in the research observing what they have been doing, they are not fair. They are part.
No,
they are part.
You placed yourself there.
They are part and parcel.
Debate on non-partisan line.
No,
that is the option you took.
Because you don't want to look at the positive aspects of our state.
Can I do this? I'm bringing in Professor.
Yeah. Just allow me a very small intervention.
Yeah.
My first statement in reply to the president as leader of opposition. He had made a statement that they were going to build Karuma and the other dam.
Bujagali?
No, not Bujagali. No, the one, there's one down. Yes, two dams. 44 in 44 months. I told the president, first of all, we don't have the expertise. Secondly, we don't have the infrastructure. And I listed many things. And I said, if you really want to even build our capacity, besides building a dam, start with one. Both dams, up to now, are not yet complete.
But they will be completed.
Okay, let me, my technical team says there are so many messages and the questions coming from the viewers. I want to share them with the rest. And then I come back to the studio and we do wind up in about 2 minutes each. And we come up with some way forward, what we think should be going forward, especially the next 1 year when we are going to make 60 years. So Musungu James from Manafwa says, Charles, thanks for the show. 59 years of independence has seen Ugandan sovereignty compromised. Who controls the major institutions of government? Banks are in foreign hands. Mineral exploitation. In fact, Uganda, as we talk, is managed by China. Look at the budget 21-22. What is the debt burden owed to China? To me, Uganda is a colony of China. This is Morris from SETA. He says, Mr. Elijah should know that since independence, there hasn't been civil liberties. To a scale of 10, it has been deteriorating to 4. And let the discussion be about Ugandans, not when you go abroad. Thank you, Morris. Bwayo Robert Magufuli says, in the 59 years of independence, think we have only improved on security, but other sectors are still wanting, like health sector, because we still receive donations with strings attached. And this show, we are still dependent, because we are just told to respect human rights. Thanks. Sajon Igumira Rwamasindi from Kiruhura district says, Dear Charles, thanks for this good and educative show always. Since independence, Uganda was known as a country of military coups. It witnessed several military coups halting much of its development. But since 1986, the country has been stable and progressing. Thank you, John. Ezra Nkirirehi in Busiro Wakiso. Good panel, Charles, but Uganda was moving well just after independence minus a means time, but excellent from 1986 to about 2000. But since then, we are on downward trend with a lot of impunity, especially with high politicians and security agencies. Thank you, Ezra. I'm Dennis Asimwe in Nyendo, Masaka. Thank you, Charles. I agree with Mr. Segona about failures of NRM, but I wish him to tell us at least one good thing NRM has done ever since it took over power. Honorable Segona, you have a challenge there. Start thinking of it as we come to the conclusion. Paul from Ibanda says, the challenge of unemployment is because of the education system which Honorable Segona is glorifying. The answer to unemployment is in the new curriculum, which unfortunately the 10th Parliament wanted to stop. Paul, Honorable Segona has not glorified. By Peter Nyanzi, this should be the last in Kawempe. Good evening, Charles, and thanks for the show. We should stop discussing independence with NRM and Museveni as the focal points and focus on how we can create a more prosperous, healthy, and sustainable society to be enjoyed by all. Thank you, Peter Nyanzi. But I don't know whether it was Mao who one time said, there is a reason why a vehicle drives forward, but that the manufacturer has put a driving mirror on it. There is a reason. It is not for nothing. So it is important, like Professor says, comparative politics. We need to even when we go forward, and we must, we really need to compare how are we.
But it's more dangerous to rely on the driving mirror and therefore end up reversing it.
Perhaps that's what Nyanzi is saying. Professor, you wanted to respond, but if there is anything you talked about when you referred to the key factor indicators, someone, one of those messengers said, one of the things that has really improved is security. That, I think, all of us agree. But the rest is where the question becomes. So, Professor, we are now moving close to a close, actually. I just need us to look at the way forward now. What should be done? Professor Ogenga had said that there is need for a common sitting and agreeing on way forward, especially as we get towards the 60-year mark, if we are going to do better as a country. What do you think? In 2 minutes, and I'm just going to do a round so that then we end. Yeah, starting with you. And you can use the opportunity to respond to some of
I think we have a good representation in Parliament in terms of diversity. And we could use the legislature as a rallying point where we can discuss a number of issues that affect us. Of recent, I see many people coming up with issues of national importance, even those which are not of national importance. But that shows people are beginning to see Parliament as a power center where you can bring issues and then you get a response that is acceptable. So we can use the legislature of Parliament to discuss a number of issues. And even the people outside Parliament, like civil society, the academia, have an opportunity to make input on issues within Parliament.
Even when they are being closed down.
As we celebrate 59 years of independence, I want to tell Ugandans that there is hope. We should have hope. There is commitment among leaders to move forward. There are shortcomings, there are excesses which we can address. But we should not paint a picture of hopelessness, of too much governance deficits. And we should know some of the challenges we share with other developing countries. So we cannot come out of this if we don't cooperate with others. Okay. That's the whole idea of Pan-Africanism. The idea of East African community, the idea of African Union is very critical because we need each other. We cannot solve some of these problems if we remain in Uganda alone. Thank you. I call upon listeners and viewers to have hope in their country because there is a direction.
Thank you.
What we need is to improve on discipline and determination so that we can have socio-economic transformation which we all desire.
Thank you very much. Honorable Segona, way forward, 2 minutes.
Well, someone asked me if I could tell them something which the NRM has done perfectly well. I am not saying that the NRM is entirely useless or the NRM government has been entirely useless. I think they have succeeded and made us proud in overborrowing. So they have overborrowed and annexed the money unto themselves. That one, to me, is a plus for them. Those are Ugandans who are feasting onto our borrowings, so we credit them for the benefit of the person who asked me the question. With respect to independence, I think Uganda would have had much more fruits of independence if we had a government. Painfully, you must notice that we don't have a government of late. We have a group of men ruling a country, and the most painful thing is ruling us in conspiracy. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ogenga, let you go.
59 years that have passed will not come back. But there are many lessons that we can draw from to make the next 59 years different. The one key thing that we must honestly look at is how do we end adversarial politics. Not adversarial in terms of ideas, but physical adversity to your opponents that generates hatred, that generates tension, that diverts resources in the name of security. Uganda is a blessed country in terms of what God created. But whether being blessed is a curse, I don't know. But if it is a curse, we really need to call upon our elders to release us from the curse so that we take advantage of the potential of this country and move forward.
Thank you so much, Professor. Sarah?
You know, as a country, the way we've worked...
Maybe, Sarah, to be fair, there is a viewer who has sent a message and is complaining that I always don't read his messages, and he has demanded that today the message should be read. He says, so I will ask Sarah to just comment on that as you wind up.
Okay.
Good evening, Charles. One, many Ugandans have got a lot of money from Middle East. I have cousins. There is nothing like cousin sisters, Emma. I have cousins that have built houses for their parents in the village, and they have accumulated capital. My brother has 70 cows and is still working in Qatar. Is that bad for the country? Is that bad for our country? Ask Sarah. Then he says, the suffering she is saying is not different with few bad things that are in our country. For example, I saw news yesterday, a mayor who is from Noop is accused of kidnapping a 17-year-old. I don't know whether that, I didn't see it myself, but he says he saw it. Then two, he says, as for Professor Latigo, he has told us only one let him tell us only one professor in Rwanda who can speak his mind or her mind like he is doing. I thank you. Sarah, as being the last speaker,
I will comment on labor, people who migration labor. I did a research. Many countries have earned a lot of money through export of labor, skilled and unskilled. But they have created, I would use an example of Indonesia. They have created labor commission boards. For example, like in the Middle East where many people are going. They have sent their experts, their government officials, immigration, psychologists, social workers, and they enable their citizens to go abroad and work, and they ensure the rights of their citizens are protected where they are working. In this process, the governments earn a percentage of the money that these labor countries pay. And they are able to save themselves, for example, from the debt burden that we are experiencing here. They do not borrow, but they do organize it. They put in place organized conditions for their citizens to go abroad and work, both skilled and unskilled, protect them, ensure their rights are safeguarded, and they earn a living with dignity, but also the country benefits. And I don't know whether such things are rocket science for our country. After 59 years. But Charles, my pain as a citizen, a middle-aged citizen in this country, 59 years of independence, we have walked a journey of hypocrisy, of pretense, of deception, of self-interest, and excessive greed. Right from independence, the manipulations that happened. There is no difference. In 1967, when Obote outrode other political parties and they declared a one-party state, the only legal political party was his party. Other than the name, how different is it today? The conditions that opposition political parties operate under, right from funding, the manipulations. At the time of elections, we saw 80% of taxpayers' money meant for political party support going to one party. We see the double standards of implementing laws to favor one party. Other than a name to say political parties are free, can we take away the pretense and deception and excessive greed and live like human beings and be sincere to ourselves, to our fellow citizens, and to the country? As I conclude, Charles, the greatness of a nation is seen from undying love and sacrifice. And I don't mean, I know people have been talking about love and sacrifice. I don't mean that. Undying love and sacrifice that can enable generations and generations to dream of a better country. Let's stop the deception, let's stop the pretense, let's stop the excessive self-interest and greed, as if you must exist and everybody else must disappear. It's very unfortunate.
Thanks.
Charles,
yes, Professor.
If I can allow me,
yeah.
I packed down there, and you know, the year on which is labeled there on where when this building was,
the building of
1955.
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone said that the right to speech that you express is greatness in itself. And they said, name any professor who speaks freely in the country you're praising.
During Obote 1, you'd go to Uganda Club. Andrew Ademola is a DP. Obote appoints him permanent secretary. He would abuse the prime minister, and the prime minister would laugh. That was Uganda also.
Thank you very much. Honorable Dombo sends a happy independence anniversary message to all of you. And he caps it by saying we may have some inadequacies and democratic deficiencies, but we are moving in the right direction. And I believe that the decision by Honorable Professor Latigo and Honorable Segona to participate and make their contribution today is acknowledgement that together we can do better, but after all, in the right direction.
A vehicle in reverse gear could still move on the road.
Yes.
Kudos to Professor and Honorable Segona and Professor Mushemeza, and kudos, Madam Sarah. Happy Independence Anniversary. What a better way. Thank you so much, Honorable Emmanuel Dombo. Thanks for listening and for participating in this discussion. Thanks a lot, Professor Mushemeza. Thanks a lot, Honorable Segona. Thanks so much, Professor Latigo, and thanks a lot, Council Sarah Birete. We are glad that we could, find time. Many people we invite say often that, this time is a wrong time for traveling and we should be with our families. It's curfew time, but we always appreciate and are glad that some of you find time to come here and share your knowledge with the country, but most especially with our viewers and people who listen into this show. We congratulate your families, and you take them our messages, especially for Independence Anniversary best wishes.
The only celebration I have at Independence is my wife's birthday.
Happy birthday to her in advance. And the team here, the team of producers, I'm happy with your work, and thanks for serving the show. And to the whole country, happy independence celebrations. Don't overdrink and don't overindulge. Remember that COVID still exists. It's still disturbing the world. Many people are still dying. So don't throw off your guard completely. If you haven't taken your jab, and especially those of you in the vulnerable age, please go and take the jab. It helps, and that's a scientific proof. There is no better way for us to get back to mingling freely, minus doing the vaccination. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless Uganda. Bye-bye.
A derby is a game between local teams in the same geographical location and even share the same borders. In a football derby, tempers player and emotions tend to be overheated. And as for Uganda versus Rwanda game, it is an East African derby that brings Kigali and Kampala to a standstill. Your popcorns, sit and relax as you support the Uganda Cranes at the comfort of your home at exactly 7 p.m. live on UBC